Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Room for Cream. This is a very special edition where our beloved host, Hot Joe, goes back and watches retro episodes of professional wrestling. So pour yourself a delicious cup, sit back and enjoy the show. This is Retrocream. And here's our humble host, Hot Joe!
Hey yo, Creamers!
Hey yo!
It's me, Hot Joe, and welcome to this episode of RFC. We've got this brand new show, Retrocream, where I'm going back and I'm watching old wrestling that I've never watched before. I was a WWF kid, and I did not watch WCW, and I was very anti-WCW as a kid because I was always that way. I always chose sides when there was like competing things, like I was always like, I like Lego, I hate Mega Block. I like Post cereal, Kellogg's could suck it. That one maybe not, but I liked WWF, I didn't like WCW, and I certainly believed all of the WWF propaganda that was made after WCW went out of business, where, like WWE had this whole thing of like, WCW was actually never good, and it's kind of like some weird coincidence that people watched it, and all this kind of stuff. But that's not the case, I'm finding out. Now, I've heard over the years that that's bullshit, and I decided to actually go and watch all the WCW Nitros. So what I'm doing right now on Retrocream is I'm going back, I'm watching WCW Nitro, and then I'm watching the pay-per-view that each of these episodes leads into. So when you see a Retrocream video, it'll be, the road to blank, insert WCW pay-per-view here. So this first video is the road to Fall Brawl 1995. Now, there were only 2 episodes of WCW Nitro leading into that pay-per-view, so this video will be probably shorter than the rest of them. But I'm going to review the 2 Nitros, and I'm going to review Fall Brawl 95 itself. So let's get into it. So the very first WCW Nitro starts off, and it's at the Mall of America in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We have Eric Bischoff and Mongo McMichael talking, I believe ringside. I don't see an announcer's desk or anything like that, but there's a rabid crowd behind them. And Bobby the Brain Heenan shows up, and he starts kind of dressing down Mongo McMichael, but I find it very entertaining. For the rest of the show, and I think for the next few shows at least that I've seen, Heenan and McMichael are kind of at each other's throats. So Mongo McMichael will call Bobby Heenan Bobby the Stain, and then Bobby Heenan calls him McNuggets and stuff. It's funny. Seeing this Mall of America audience is really, really cool looking, because when you watch WWE, you don't really feel like you're in a different venue most of the time when you're watching it. It's the same. It looks exactly the same every time. But having this episode of Nitro at the Mall of America, it looks like a big crowd, but it also has stores in the background with neon lights and crap like that, but it looks sick. And then you have all these escalators, so it kind of just looks like the crowd is moving, because these escalators are packed. It's really cool. I think it might be the coolest looking audience I've ever seen in wrestling, and you might be thinking to yourself, well, that's not a very high bar. You just said they all look alike. Well, Dynamite sometimes is at Daly's Place in Jacksonville, Florida, and it looks really unique and cool. And so does there was an episode of Dynamite early in the first year where they were on the Jericho cruise. So Dynamite was on a cruise ship, and that was super cool and unique too. But I think this Mall of America one tops those 2. The very first match was Jushin Thunder Liger, representing New Japan Pro Wrestling, versus Brian Pillman. They just call him Flying Brian. And it's funny because when I'm watching this match, I'm like, damn, if I had cable as a kid and both Nitro and Raw were on, and I was like, you know what, I think I might tune into Nitro, I feel like I'd have been a WCW fan if this was the very first match I saw, because the stuff that these guys did in this match was stuff that I don't remember seeing in those early, mid-90s WWF matches. Flying Brian really is flying. And Jushin Thunder Liger's obviously one of the greats. During the match, there was this part where the crowd was chanting USA, USA, which I found odd because this match wasn't like supposed to be like a Japan versus America match, but I guess, you know, American's gonna American. The match was pretty good. Brian Pillman won in the end, and after the match, there was a very odd, like, backstage promo with Hulk Hogan. I guess he had like a spaghetti restaurant at the time called Pasta Mania. I don't know. It was really weird to me. What are you gonna do? I mean, what you gonna do? After that, we have Ric Flair versus Sting for the United States Championship. Sting is defending. So my main exposure to Sting is when he was in TNA, because I was a big TNA guy. And so I never really got to see Surfer Sting wrestle, but man, again, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here, but if I was a wrestling fan watching WCW in the 90s, Sting would have absolutely been my favorite wrestler. That's something that I thought about every show that I've watched so far when Sting's in the ring. He's explosive, he's exciting, his yell that he does. He does it like a wild man, and he was great. He has a super cool look. He's just a really cool wrestler, and I see why he was their top guy at the time. The match was amazing. Flair versus Sting in the very first episode of Nitro had to have been strategic. I mean, it was an amazing match, top notch. The match ended because Arn Anderson walked out. Like, I didn't know who he was out there for. I thought he was out for Flair. They're the Four Horsemen guys and everything. They're friends. Arn's watching as the match is going on at the end. And then Ric Flair gets the figure four, and Sting tries to turn it over to reverse it. And Flair grabs the ropes, and so that way, you know, it's impossible for Sting to turn it over. And so then Arn Anderson just gets into the ring. But just him getting into the ring causes the match to be thrown out. The referee disqualifies, I guess, both guys. I don't know. He didn't say, like, but the match was just, it ended because of disqualification. I hate disqualification endings, but it didn't ruin this match for me. It made me more intrigued to be like, why did Arn Anderson do that? Then Ric Flair gets up, and Arn gets kind of in his face and just beats the crap out of him. It was sick. I don't know. I loved that match, though. It was really good. Oh, I should mention, before the match started was when they did the Lex Luger debut, or return, I guess. I don't know. When he walks out with that, like, white dress shirt looking like he's going to pose for a romance novel. I've seen that moment before, you know, in, like, the Monday Night Wars documentary and stuff like that. But the way the show was structured, I could see how this was a more important moment than I would have realized, and especially going into later in the night and the rest of the shows leading into the pay-per-view. And after, you know, Arn Anderson beat up Ric Flair and stuff, Scott Norton, who I've actually never seen wrestle before, gets up in Eric Bischoff's face, and he's like, I don't know, mad for some reason. And then Macho Man kind of comes up from behind him and is like, you know, you should wrestle me. And then he gets in the ring and he kind of goes nuts. And then we hear from the commentary team that this match can't happen. It ends up being next week, on next week's Nitro. Then they had a video package for VK Wall Street, who I guess is IRS. It was fine. The main event was Big Bubba Rogers versus the WCW World Champion Hulk Hogan. Now, I've never really been a Hogan guy, but it was still exciting watching this match, even though it wasn't as good as the Sting Ric Flair match. You know, Hogan did his normal stuff where he hulks up and does the whole, you know, Irish whip, big boot, leg drop for the finish. But it was still fun. The crowd enjoyed it, and in a nostalgic way, which is weird because I, you know, don't really have nostalgia for WCW, but somehow it was very cool to watch. I don't know. And also it was nice seeing seeing Hulk Hogan as the WCW champion wrestling on Nitro. After the match, the Dungeon of Doom run in and attack Hogan as he's celebrating his win, and then Sting and Macho Man make the save. And then Lex Luger comes out, and Mean Gene Okerlund interviews them. Luger tells Hogan that he's been down all the roads that Hogan's been down, and that he's beat all the guys that Hogan's beat, but he's tired of playing with children. Okay. He wants to play with where the big boys play. My final thoughts for the first episode of Nitro are: I love the unique look of the Mall of America, the stories and everything, the way they did everything. If I watched it while it was live, I would definitely want to tune into next week. My favorite match on the show was definitely Sting versus Flair, and I think the thing that I'm most excited about watching Nitros is seeing Sting. So that was the first episode of Nitro. We're going to go to a quick commercial break. Creamers, don't you go anywhere. And we'll be right back for episode 2 of Nitro.
Hola, mi por favors. It's me, Hot Joe from Room for Cream. Do you enjoy a delicious taco as much as I do? Well, go on down to Danny's Drippin' Wet Tacos. And if you go down to Danny's Drippin' Wet Tacos after today, or during the day, in a little bit, in an hour, you can get a delicious 3 Drippin' Wets for $1. So wet. So head on down to Danny's Drippin' Wet Tacos right to, in an hour or within an hour, and you're gonna get 3 tacos, 3 delicious tacos, 3 delicious Drippin' Wets, and you're gonna get 3 Drippin' Wets for $1, amigo. You won't just get 1 Drippin' Wet. You'll get 2 Drippin' Wet. You'll get 3 Drippin' Wet tacos for the price of $1 for 3 Drippin' Wets. I love Drippin' Wet tacos, and I love Danny. So head on down to Danny's Drippin' Wet Tacos today.
Definitely had a little bit too much coffee.
Welcome back, Creamers. I'm just going to get straight into it. Episode 2 of WCW Nitro. It started off with Sabu versus Das Wonder Kid, a.k.a. Alex Wright. Sabu got most of the offense, but Alex Wright got some into. I believe I heard the commentators say that he is 20 years old, and I've obviously heard of Alex Wright. This is my first time ever watching a full match of him, but I like him. I think he's really good, and he's a the perfect opponent for Sabu to show what he could do to a new audience watching Nitro. It was a pretty high-flying match. I remember the other day I was listening to Paul Heyman talk about Rob Van Dam, and he said that Rob Van Dam, he's a high flyer, but his high-flying moves aren't pretty; they're violent. And I feel the exact same way about Sabu, maybe even a little rougher with Sabu. But he does a lot of high-flying maneuvers, and he makes them look dangerous as hell, not just for himself, but also for his opponent. In the end, Sabu ended up winning with an avalanche roll-up, which I've never seen that before, and he got the 1-2-3. Immediately after the match, he starts beating up Alex Wright, and he, beats him up to the outside, goes over and gets this table that doesn't look like your typical wrestling, table, and he puts Alex Wright on top of the table, goes on the top turnbuckle, and jumps onto him, breaking him through the table. So after Sabu puts Alex Wright through the table, the referee reverses his decision, and Sabu actually lost. So that was weird. I've never seen that kind of thing before. Sabu won the match, and then he beat up his opponent afterwards, and being a poor sport cost him the victory that he got by being disqualified. I never seen this thing. I've never seen this type of thing before, but I actually think it was kind of cool because it makes it feel more like it's a real sport. Like if I was watching basketball and the game was over and then the winning team just started beating the crap out of the losing team, I think the NBA would probably reverse the decision. I don't know. After that, we had Ric Flair coming out for an in-ring interview with Mean Gene Okerlund. He talks about how basically that Arn Anderson doesn't want to hang anymore and doesn't want to party with them anymore and stuff. He's like, I went to a party basically, and where was Arn? He was in his hotel room calling his wife and kid, and so he's making fun of him for that. Lex Luger walks out for reasons that I do not understand. He's in his gear, so it's very weird. But he does this, and then Ric Flair just starts talking about Lex Luger's body. He just says, like, you've got a delicious body, Lex Luger. You know, he says his height and his weight, and he talks about his muscles. And then Lex Luger just walks out back to the backstage. It was a very strange thing that I don't get, but it happened. Next up, we have Sting defending his U.S. title again, this time versus VK Wall Street. It wasn't as good as last week's Sting match, but that's because, you know, VK Wall Street isn't as good of a wrestler as Ric Flair is, but it was still pretty good. Sting was awesome. And VK Wall Street was a pretty good villain because, you know, his offense was stopping Sting from doing his exciting offense, and that makes you mad at him. You want to see Sting do his cool stuff. In the end, Sting gets the victory with a flying crossbody and the pin. If I was a 5-year-old, I probably would have been painting my face to look like Sting and going to the Nitro shows. Next up is Scott Norton versus Macho Man, another first time seeing somebody wrestle for me, which is Scott Norton. Scott Norton is strong, man. He makes Macho Man seem like he weighs as much as Rey Mysterio. He picks him up like he's nothing. He throws him around like a rag doll. He's very strong, and he's pretty athletic. I mean, I guess he was in the NFL or something. It was a weird finish, but I liked it. The Dungeon of Doom ran in to stop Macho Man from potentially winning, but Shark got like hit by Norton as he was walking into the ring, and then he fell on Norton's leg, so Norton couldn't get up because Shark is ginormous. So then Macho Man takes advantage of this and goes to the top and hits a flying elbow drop. 1, 2, 3. Macho Man wins, and he immediately just books it. And the Dungeon of Doom is like, the Taskmaster had like this weird giant spear thing, and he was like brought into the ring and was like jabbing it towards Macho Man, but Macho Man was already out of the ring, and he just, you know, left. I don't understand why he had that weird weapon, but he did. Now it's the main event. And again, I'm not a fan of Hogan, but I do really appreciate, I mean, I don't know if it's going to always be like this, but at least right now, that Hogan is the world champion, and he's wrestling every single week on Nitro. And this time he wrestles against Lex Luger, and it was that had to be a channel turner for people. Like, if I was watching Raw and I knew that Luger versus Hogan for the WCW title was happening on the other show, I'd be like, I'll go watch that. We also had the whole thing tonight where Eric Bischoff is telling you what happens on Raw, which I knew happened from the Monday Night War documentary. I didn't realize it happens right away, like the second episode of Nitro, and he's already doing that. I don't think it's like that evil of a thing, because I mean, I've been hearing about it for like 20 years by now, but it's kind of funny to me, so I like it. But yeah, so this match was all right, but certainly not the best on the card. At one point, Luger hits the torture rack on Hogan, and I've never liked that move, man. It's just so weird looking. Like, it doesn't seem like it would really hurt you. I guess no one's ever done it to me, but I just don't see how that's like a submission that you might tap out or like lose a match from. Luger gets him in it, and then he gets out of it. The match ends with Hogan hitting the leg drop, and Hogan was about to get the victory, and then the Dungeon of Doom come out and attack him. Now, they don't touch Luger at all. They only come in there and beat up Hulk Hogan. So, obviously, when Macho Man and Sting make the run in and save him, they're like, why weren't they attacking you, Luger? So, yeah, Sting and Macho Man run in, and they make the save, and the Dungeon of Doom run off, and Mean Gene gets in the ring and starts interviewing Hogan, and Hogan is like, Luger, why did the Dungeon of Doom not attack you? Now, Luger doesn't know this, doesn't know the reason, you know? So Macho Man is like in agreement with Hogan, and he's like, no, man, what is that all about? And then Sting is like, guys, he's not a part of the Dungeon of Doom. He's not friends with them. Vader is AWOL because Vader was supposed to be their partner. Vader is AWOL. I say we have Luger join our team. Now, what he means is at Fall Brawl, they have the War Games match, and it was supposed to be Sting, Vader, Hogan, and Macho Man Randy Savage as a team versus the Dungeon of Doom. But now Vader is AWOL. They don't know where he is. So now they need a new man, or they're going to be at a disadvantage. So reluctantly, Hogan and Macho Man agree with Sting, and they end up having Lex Luger be their partner coming this Sunday at Fall Brawl. My overall view on the second episode of Nitro was, if I was watching this live, it would have definitely these two shows would have definitely made me want to buy the pay-per-view and see what happens next. They've like the WCW Nitro shows really do a good job of being like serialized and making you want to see the next episode, because like the storyline is always like a cliffhanger every time, and they have a lot of stars, man. But yeah, so the best match was definitely the Sabu match versus Alex Wright, but the whole show was pretty good, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the pay-per-view Fall Brawl. We're going to go to a quick commercial break again, and when we come back, it'll be the final segment where we talk about the pay-per-view itself, Fall Brawl 1995.
What's up, Creamers? It's Hot Joe, and I've got news for all my flavor fans out there. Are you a fan of delicious tastes and stuff that's, you know, really flavorful? Well, have I got news for you, because guess what? Danny's Drippin' Wet Tacos have a hot new item on the menu. That's right.
Lil Drippies.
You can get a 6-pack of Lil Drippies for the low price of $3.99. And if you act now, you can get a free large malt cola on the side. So hit up your local Danny's Drippin' Wet Tacos today.
Welcome back, Creamers! So it's time for Fall Brawl 1995, and I'll tell you what, they have a video package at the beginning of the show that definitely makes this pay-per-view seem like a
Big deal, let's say.
It hypes me up, I'll tell you that for free. So the show starts off with Hulk Hogan arrives on a motorcycle that I guess, like, I don't remember, I think like the city gave him? I don't know. And then there's like a bunch of people crowded around him like, Hogan, we love you. Oh my God, you're here. You know, you're our best. You know, you're our nation's best. And then you hear, you know, Hogan's like, I love you guys too, brother. You know, keep up the good work, dude. Stuff like that. And then you hear you hear some noises, and then Hogan jumps off of his motorcycle, and then the Giant runs over Hulk Hogan's motorcycle, and then he drives backwards and he drives forwards, and he just keeps smashing up this motorcycle. And then Hogan like smacks on the monster truck, and he's like, "Why would you do this?" And then the Giant just laughs, and that was the whole segment. Very weird. Now we get to the first match of the show. It's Brian Pillman, Flying Brian, versus Johnny B. Bad, Mark Marrow, for the number one contendership of the United States title. I remember vaguely seeing Mark Marrow wrestle in WWE, but I don't remember him super well. I remember he doesn't dress the same as he does in WCW, but he was very good. He is a very good wrestler, and him and Brian Pillman had a match that when it started, I was like, okay, I guess this is a match. But it was exciting, it was long, and it was dramatic, and there was a great story to the match of like Brian Pillman and him being like friendly with each other in the beginning of the match. Johnny B. Bad is hard to put down for Flying Brian, and it's frustrating him. Like at first they're shaking hands, they do some really nice little chain wrestling, and then they're standing apart from each other, and then they shake hands again because they're friendly with each other, like I said. But Pillman's getting frustrated, and throughout the match he starts resorting to dirty tactics, but not like poke him in the eyes or low blows or anything, but holding his tights or something. You know what I mean? Like something that's like, it's not the worst, but it is starting to irritate Johnny B. Bad. Then he tries to shake Johnny B. Bad's hand again, and Johnny B. Bad smacks his hand. Why? Because he be good. They end up trading the upper hand throughout the match, back and forth, and eventually they go to a time limit draw. then referee Nick Patrick calls for sudden death. You know, I've never seen this match. I didn't know this was going to be the result, so I was on the edge of my seat, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm glad because I want to see more of this match. I want to see one of these guys put the other guy down. In the end, Johnny B. Bad gets the victory, and he's the #1 contender for the United States Championship. More on Flying Brian later. So I guess in the future, Johnny B. Bad is going to be facing Sting for the United States title. Dave Meltzer gave this match 4 stars, and I 100% agree. Actually, spoiler alert, it's the highest rated match on the show. Not just from Dave Meltzer, but from old Hot Joe as well. The next match is Sergeant Craig Pittman versus Cobra. I've never heard of either of these guys, and I don't mean that to be disrespectful. I just haven't. And I also don't mean it to be disrespectful in saying that this match wasn't very good, especially following that last match. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't have much to say about it. The only notes I wrote down were, Cobra is apparently a CIA agent, and Sergeant Pittman is an equally silly character. Pittman sneaks from behind Cobra and chokes him out with like a chain of bullets. And I don't know. The match wasn't very good. Pittman ended up winning by submission. Meltzer gave it a dud. I agree. I'm sorry to the guys that if they did their best work, then I do feel bad giving it a dud myself, but it wasn't very good. And I think especially following that match, with Pillman versus Johnny B. Bad, this match did not follow that well. After that, we had the TV title match, DDP challenging the Renegade for the television title. I've never seen the Renegade wrestle, but I do know of him, and I know that he is like a knockoff of the Ultimate Warrior, and I believe they tried to make it seem like he was the Ultimate Warrior. So yeah, I've never seen him wrestle. I've never seen a WCW DDP match before. I've watched him wrestle during the Invasion and stuff storyline and when he came over to WWE, but I've never seen him wrestle in WCW. It was fine. It was certainly a better match than the one before it. DDP ends up getting the victory. His manager is his wife, I believe, and some other guy. The Renegade had his leg stuck in the rope because DDP's other manager was holding his leg, and then DDP was able to hit the diamond cutter and get the victory. I will say this about Renegade: if he wasn't cursed with this gimmick of being a ripoff of the Ultimate Warrior, I think he would have probably been at least a well-liked wrestler. He was definitely a better wrestler than the Ultimate Warrior. He seemed like he could do more exciting things than the Ultimate Warrior, but he was plagued with this silly gimmick of being the Ultimate Warrior, but not. Meltzer gave this Renegade versus DDP match a 2 stars, and I think that is also very fair. The next match was Harlem Heat challenging the tag team champions Bunkhouse Buck and Dick Slater. The match was a more slow and methodical match than the previous matches. I had the sense that Bunkhouse Buck and Dick Slater were controlling the pace because I've watched Booker T wrestle, and he has very fun to watch matches. The referee ended up being distracted because Harlem Heat's manager and the Bunkhouse Buck and Dick Slater's manager were making out, and that distracted the ref, and Harlem Heat was able to get the victory. So Harlem Heat became the new tag team champions in a fine match, I guess. Meltzer gave it 1 star, and I'm finding more and more throughout watching this pay-per-view and checking to see what Meltzer rated it that I agree with his star ratings, at least in 1995. Next, we had Flair versus Anderson. It was a very technical match. One thing I really enjoyed about it was that they showed you Flying Brian Pillman was in the front row watching, and Eddie Guerrero was watching, and Alex Wright was watching, and Buff Bagwell was watching, and Big Bubba Rogers was watching, just to be all these guys want to watch Arn Anderson versus Ric Flair in a one-on-one. So it was a cool thing that they added to the match. It was very technical, back and forth. Arn Anderson, was like a bruiser, and Ric Flair was obviously trying to out wrestle him, and sort of use his cheats. He wanted to use his cheats on him, and eventually, though, Ric Flair goes to Irish whip Arn Anderson from corner to corner, and as soon as he starts to Irish whip him, Arn Anderson's legs give out and he falls to the ground. And I mean, I don't think that was real, but it looked real, and I felt scared for Arn Anderson. And then Brian Pillman gets on the apron and distracts Ric Flair, and Ric Flair's like, "What do you want?" And then Brian Pillman punches Ric Flair in the face, and then Ric Flair punches Brian Pillman back, and Brian Pillman falls down on the apron, but then he gets back up and he like jumps and kicks Ric Flair in the head. And as Ric Flair's falling, Arn Anderson has gotten up at this point, and Arn Anderson grabs the falling Ric Flair into a DDT and just DDTs him, and then pins him and gets the 1-2-3, and Arn Anderson beat Ric Flair. It was a pretty good match. Dave Meltzer gave this match 3.5 stars, and yet again, I agree with him. Finally, we're at the main event. The War Games match. They explain the rules of the War Games match, and then Mike Buffer says it's if Hogan's team wins, Hogan gets 5 minutes with the Taskmaster. Dungeon of Doom make their entrance. Then Hogan's team makes their entrance, and they're all dressed in camo with like war paint on and stuff. The first 2 men in the match are Shark and Sting. Immediately when the bell rings, the Shark starts mauling Sting. The second guy to come in is the Zodiac from the Dungeon of Doom. And so obviously they're double teaming Sting. The next man in the ring is Macho Man Randy Savage, and he explodes all over his opponents. After that, we've got Kamala, and our heroes are now at the disadvantage of, again, this time 3-2. Next guy in is Luger, and he evens it out. Savage and Luger are working together and double teaming their opponents with double team moves. The next in is Ming. The next guy in is Ming, giving the Dungeon of Doom the advantage yet again. Right as he's entering, Luger accidentally hits Macho Man. And Macho Man thinks it was on purpose, and he freaks out, and they start getting into each other's faces, and then Ming is able to attack them, and he kicks their shit in. Hogan then enters the ring, and he's using weird things that I had never seen Hogan do before, like throwing powder in people's faces and stuff. When he does this, the commentary team is like, "I smoke gunpowder." Well, actually, first they say it's napalm, but the match beyond has officially begun. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the War Games match, but the only way to win is submission or surrender. So you can either tap out or give up. Hulk Hogan ends up getting the Zodiac in the camel clutch, and he gives up, and the match is over. The War Games match is over. It wasn't the best War Games match I've ever seen. I've watched like the Blood and Guts matches on AEW that follow the traditional rules of the War Games match, and I've seen the like NXT War Games matches that have like pinfall, and they don't have like a ceiling on the cage and stuff. So this wasn't the best one I've seen, but it was fine. Now Hogan gets his 5 minutes alone with the Taskmaster. He tries to run away, but Sting grabs him and throws him into the cage, and the Dungeon of Doom and the Hulkamaniacs teams both leave to let Hogan and Taskmaster have their time alone. Hogan is beating the crap out of him. He ends up getting out of the cage, and Hogan goes out, beats him up, throws him back in the cage. And then who comes out? Well, the Giant is who comes out. The Giant comes out, and he beats the crap out of Hulk Hogan, and then he like snaps his neck. I think he killed him. I think he might have killed him. Then the Hulkamaniac team runs back out to save Hulk Hogan, and the Giant leaves. And that's the end of the pay-per-view. Even the pay-per-views have cliffhanger endings. So, overall, that match had a 1 1/4 star from Dave Meltzer, and this one I don't really agree with. I would probably give it 2.5 stars if it was me. But it was alright. It wasn't the best, but it was a pretty good pay-per-view if you're looking at it from being like a special episode of a show. I'm glad I didn't spend $50 or $60 on it or whatever it cost in 1995, and that I just watched it on Peacock for free. But I'm looking forward to seeing the next episode of Nitro, and then the next episode of Retrocream is going to have me discussing the following episodes of Nitro leading into the next pay-per-view. which I believe is Halloween Havoc. I might be wrong, but I believe it is. So thank you for stopping by, Creamers, and I look forward to seeing you again. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to share this video with everybody you know. Tell them that if they watch it, you give them a little kiss on the cheek, huh? I love you, Creamers. You stay creamy.
He was successful in just using his mouth to get the man off.